to Gashley United Methodist Church. I am Jen, one of the pastors here, and I'm excited to be with you during this service. This is our Christmas Eve service that you will be hearing this evening. We wanted to be able to give you a chance to hear the great message on the night that Jesus was born. So to preface this, we ask that you read Luke 2, 1 through 20. That is what the sermon is based on. I used to be a substitute teacher prior to entering into ministry. I started out in high schools, then decided middle school was more my taste, before finding out that actually I liked elementary better, specifically kindergartners. I love that most of them try to use their scissors upside down. I love that they come out of the bathroom with most of their clothes still off and are not embarrassed by it one bit. I love that they don't smell like Axe body spray. And I love that sometimes they forget and they call the teacher mom. Mom, the person they love the most in this world. To be mistaken for her is to have absolute love and trust from kids. I love that they're so willing to please and to be silly and willing to share with their friends, because at this age, everybody is a friend. I love that they love to learn and that they find all my stupid dad jokes hysterical. And I love that they will also make room for anyone. No questions asked. Need somewhere to sit? We'll fit you in. No one to play with? Come join us. No partner for an activity? We can be a trio. They're always open to welcoming more into their world. We have been in a series called How Does a Weary World Rejoice for the last 4 weeks. We've been recognizing that even though the world around us may be celebrating the Christmas season, some of us are weary. Some of us are not in the holiday spirit, and that's okay. But we can learn during this season of weariness that we can acknowledge our weariness, we can try to find joy and connection, we can allow ourselves to be amazed, and we can sing stories of hope. And today, we learn to make room for others. Luke's gospel tells us that when Mary gave birth to Jesus, she laid him in a manger, for there was no place for them in the guest room. Now, scholars argue about where exactly the birth occurs and why. Was it in a stable or a living room of a simple peasant home? Was Bethlehem teeming with visitors who were also there to be counted in the census? Was Joseph's family inhospitable because they disapproved of his marital situation? Regardless of all of that or where the birth even occurred, we know that Christ is born in a crowded, unlikely place. And yet God makes a place here anyway. God draws the circle wider as shepherds and unexpected guests arrived. New Testament scholar Kenneth E. Bailey, he describes the layout of traditional peasant homes in Palestine and argues against the idea that an innkeeper provided the Holy Family a barn stable after they were rejected elsewhere. In his interpretation of the text, the family was shown traditional Middle Eastern hospitality and welcomed into the main living room of a simple peasant home, which signaled to the shepherds that then they were also welcomed, not rejected, when they arrived to see the child placed in a manger of a simple peasant home. Regardless of the details of the story, there are super important threads of hospitality spread throughout the narrative. That God makes room. The question is, though, can we? There is this famously told Christmas story about a little boy who wanted to be Joseph in the nativity play in his school, and he did not get the part of Joseph, but did land the part of the innkeeper, and he was so very disappointed with that role. The night of the performance, he decided to change the story. The story, as told, caused Joseph to inquire about a place for him and Mary. The crowd anticipated that the innkeeper would say there's no room in the inn, like we've all been taught. However, the little boy changed the story that night, and he said, "Sure, I've got the best room in the inn. You may have mine." This changed the whole story and caused everyone in the crowd to laugh. And when his parents got him home that night, they asked him why he changed the story. And he told them what he'd learned as a small boy in church. Since no one knows the day nor the hour that the Son of God will return, then we ought to be ready to give God our best. Lean not on our own understanding and in all our own ways, but to trust God to direct our paths. We make room. God makes room. The angels tell the shepherds, and they make room. There is always room. There's always more space. There's always plenty of good room. Just choose your seat and sit down. Where we find the lack of hospitality is often where we also find the lack of joy. Joseph and Mary were given this opportunity to be together, even in a space that declared no room. The shepherds went to Bethlehem to see this thing that had taken place, causing them to be together with the Holy Family. Not only did the shepherds come and witness this thing, but they also left, telling everyone and glorifying and praising God, giving society a chance to be together. And Jesus' birth is a story about God making room for great joy to break beyond boundaries, for awe to push past the limits of our imaginations, for welcome to be extended to shepherds and strangers. This is a story about how God makes room. In what ways can you make room for others this season? How can you extend a welcome? How can you make room for joy? How can you make room for God and to accompany you through whatever this season may bring? In an article titled, "God's Faithfulness Shows Up with Wonder and Surprise in a Weary and Heavy-Laden World," Pastor Christine Chakoyan states, "There is no obvious evidence of God's glory in the circumstances of Jesus' birth. But it is precisely when the news is bleak, when there is reason to count on our own faith as absurd, that God's faithfulness does show up in wonder and surprise. And against all odds, beyond all expectations, where do you glimpse God's faithfulness showing up in wonder and surprise?" Christ's birth is a story about God making room in unlikely places and circumstances. And after Jesus is born, God draws that circle wider, right? As shepherds and the strangers start to arrive, sending this message of good news across the countryside. How are we making room for good news to greet us this year? Our task during this Christmas season is to make room in the same manner. We should acknowledge that the world is weary from grief, war, a pandemic, political strife, personal and corporate failings, and the list could continue. And although these weary acts take place, our rejoicing happens when we encounter life together. When we change the story, as it might seem to be, and make room for collective moments to rejoice. For no one knows the day, not the hour of the second advent. So let's not lean on our own understanding, but in all our ways trust God to direct our paths, offering God our best by making room for others. This Christmas, let's celebrate. Let's celebrate the joy that comes from the act of hospitality, of being welcomed in and also being the one to extend the hospitality. This Christmas, let us make room for strangers and neighbors alike, for this is good news of great joy for all people. This room, the room we make, will allow a weary world to rejoice. Amen. Go in peace.